It was past midnight. Not the peaceful kind of midnight, the heavy kind. The kind where the world feels quiet, but your thoughts are screaming. Mira Jensen sat on the cold kitchen floor of her tiny apartment, her back against a cabinet that hadn't closed properly in months. The light above her was off, not because she wanted darkness, but because the electricity had been cut earlier that evening. The power company didn't care about explanations. Bills were bills. She pulled a thin, worn baby blanket tighter around her shoulders. It used to be white. Now it was a tired gray, soft from too many washes and too many hard nights. In the next room, her son cried. Not the loud cry of discomfort, the weak cry of hunger. That sound cuts differently. It goes straight through you. Mira closed her eyes and pressed her forehead into her knees. Her stomach twisted. Not from hunger, she was used to that, but from the fear that sat right behind her ribs. The kind of fear only a parent understands. The fear of not being enough. She stood up slowly, her legs stiff from sitting too long, and walked to the counter. An empty formula can sat there, tipped on its side. She didn't touch it. She couldn't. Looking at it felt like admitting defeat. Tonight, Noah's bottle had been mostly water. She hated herself for that. He didn't know. He was too young to understand why his stomach still hurt afterward. He only knew that his mom held him tight and whispered apologies he couldn't understand. Mira grabbed her phone. The screen lit up her face in the dark, showing the lines that exhaustion had carved deeper than she wanted to admit. Her thumb hovered over one contact. Ben, her brother. He had helped before. Not happily, not kindly, but he had helped. She didn't want to ask again. Every time she did, it chipped away at something inside her. Pride, maybe, or dignity, or the illusion that she still had control over her life. But tonight wasn't about pride. It was about a baby who didn't understand why food was suddenly optional. Her fingers trembled as she typed. Ben, I'm sorry to bother you again. I just need $50 for formula. Noah's almost out. I get paid Friday. I'll pay you back. Please. She stared at the message, read it twice, then once more. She didn't double-check the number. She didn't look at the name. She just pressed send. The phone slipped from her hand and landed face down on the counter with a soft clack. Mira slid back down to the floor, wrapping her arms around herself like she could hold the pieces together if she squeezed hard enough. From the bedroom, Noah cried again. She counted his cries the way some people count breaths. 1, 2, 3, waiting for them to space out, waiting for exhaustion to win. 5 minutes passed. Her phone buzzed. Mira flinched. Her heart jumped into her throat. She reached for the phone, hands shaking, already preparing herself for the familiar disappointment. A sigh, an excuse, a lecture about responsibility. She turned the screen over. I think you meant to send that to someone else. Her breath caught. She sat up too fast, dizziness washing over her as she stared at the screen. The number wasn't Ben's. One digit was wrong. One small mistake. Her stomach dropped. Oh no, no, no. She typed quickly. I'm so sorry, wrong number. Please ignore. She locked the phone and tossed it aside like it had burned her. Her face flushed with shame. As if being broke wasn't enough, now she had managed to humiliate herself in front of a stranger. Another failure, just another one. She pulled the blanket over her head and pressed her face into the fabric, biting down on a sob. She didn't want Noah to hear her crying too. He deserved at least one of them to sound strong. Across the city, in a place Mira couldn't even imagine on her best daydreams, a man stared at his phone. Jackson Albright sat alone in a glass-walled penthouse office, the city spread beneath him like a glittering map of everything he owned and nothing he felt. He never gave this number out, not to reporters, not to business partners, only to family. And that list had gotten smaller every year. The message on his screen wasn't spam, it wasn't polished, it wasn't manipulative. It was raw. Noah's almost out. I get paid Friday. Jackson read it again, then again. It wasn't just a request for money. It was a mother negotiating with her own dignity. Most nights he would have ignored it, deleted it, moved on. But tonight, he didn't. He typed back, "Is your baby going to be okay?" Back in her apartment, Mira stared at the message like it wasn't real. Who asks that? Her first instinct was to block the number. Strangers didn't follow up, strangers didn't care. Caring always came with strings. But something about the question stopped her. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't curious, it was simple. "Well managed," she typed. "Sorry again." Another message appeared almost immediately. "I can help, no strings." She let out a short, humorless laugh. "Thanks, but I don't take money from strangers." A pause. "I'm Jackson. Now I'm not a stranger." She didn't reply. She went back to Noah, lifted him gently, rocking him until his cries softened into hiccuping breaths. She pressed her lips to his hair and whispered promises she wasn't sure she could keep. And then, with a hand that shook worse than before, she did something she never thought she would. She sent him her Venmo. 3 seconds later, her phone buzzed. Mira froze. She looked at the screen. $5,000 received from Jackson Albright. Her mind refused to process it. She blinked, opened the app, closed it, opened it again. Still there. "This is too much," she typed desperately. "I only needed $50. "It's already yours," came the reply. "No catch. One less thing to worry about." Mira didn't cry when she lost her job. She didn't cry when her car was repossessed. She didn't cry when Noah's father disappeared. But now she broke. She covered her mouth as tears streamed down her face, silent and unstoppable. "Thank you," she typed. "I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he replied. "Just take care of Noah." Her chest tightened. She stared at the message. She had never told him her son's name. And right here, before the story goes any further, let me ask you something. Where are you watching from and what time is it right now? Comment below and tell me. I read every single one. Because what started as a simple mistake was about to change 2 lives forever. If you don't want to miss what happens next, subscribe now. This story is only just beginning. Mira didn't sleep that night. Even after Noah's breathing slowed and his tiny chest rose and fell in a steady rhythm, she lay awake on the edge of the mattress, her phone resting in her palm like it might disappear if she let go. Every few seconds, her thumb brushed the screen just to make sure it was still real. $5,000. Still there. Not pending. Not reversed. Not a dream. Her mind raced through every possible explanation. Scam. Mistake. Some elaborate setup where someone would message tomorrow demanding something in return. People didn't just give money away. Not like this. Not to strangers. She replayed his words again. No strings. Just take care of Noah. That was what scared her the most. The certainty. Like this kind of thing was normal for him. She opened the chat again and stared at the last message. She typed, deleted. Typed again, deleted again. Finally, she sent it. "You didn't have to do that." The screen stayed quiet. For a moment, she felt oddly relieved. Maybe that was it. Maybe this was just a strange, one-time moment she could lock away and never talk about again. Then her phone buzzed. "I know I didn't. I wanted to." Across the city, Jackson leaned back in a leather chair that had never once felt comfortable. He was still in his office. He always stayed late. Not because he had to, because going home meant sitting alone with memories he hadn't learned how to live with yet. The city lights reflected against the glass walls, beautiful and distant. He glanced at the message again, then typed. "Why does that surprise you?" Mira swallowed. "Because people don't help like that without wanting something," she wrote. "At least, they never have with me." There was a pause, long enough that she wondered if she'd pushed too far. Then, "Once upon a time, someone helped me when they didn't have to. I never forgot it." She stared at the words. They weren't dramatic. They weren't heroic. They felt honest. "I want to pay you back," she typed quickly, the instinct to balance the scales kicking in, "even if it takes time." "For what?" he replied. "For the formula, for the kindness, for not ignoring me." Another pause. "Tell me what kind of formula Noah needs. I'll send supplies, not money." Mira's chest tightened. Only if it's really no strings, she replied. I don't do strings. Strings are for people playing games. She finally let herself sleep after that. Not deeply, not peacefully, but enough. The knock on the door came just after sunrise. Mira sat up so fast her heart slammed against her ribs. No one knocked on her door, ever. The landlord texted. Delivery people usually left things in the lobby. This building didn't do courtesy. She wrapped Noah against her chest, walked quietly to the door, and peered through the peephole. A delivery driver. 2 of them. With boxes. A lot of boxes. She opened the door slowly. Delivery for Mira Jensen? One of them asked. Her mouth went dry. She nodded. Signature here? She signed with shaking hands. The boxes filled half her living room floor. She closed the door, leaned against it, and just stared. She opened the first box. Formula. Not the cheap kind, the exact brand Noah needed. The second box held diapers, the good ones, the kind that didn't leak or leave red marks. Baby wipes, bottles, pacifiers. The third box had baby clothes, soft, new, still smelling like a store, not desperation. At the bottom of the final box was an envelope. She opened it slowly. He should have what he needs. Noah deserves better than barely getting by. From Jackson. No logo, no return address. Just that. Mira sank onto the floor and cried again. Not the sharp, breaking cry from the night before, but something quieter, something warmer, the kind of cry when you realize someone actually saw you. She didn't touch the boxes for hours. They sat in the corner like a miracle she was afraid to accept. Noah drank a full bottle for the first time in days, then fell asleep in her arms, his body heavy with comfort instead of hunger. Mira watched him breathe and wondered what kind of world she had just stepped into. People didn't do this. Not with a camera, not with a post, not with something in it for them. Her phone buzzed. You get everything okay? Jackson asked. Yes, she typed. You didn't have to do all this. I know, but I wanted to. She hesitated, then asked the question that had been burning in her chest since last night. Why are you really doing this? The reply didn't come right away. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Her fear crept back in. Maybe she'd crossed the line. Maybe this was where the kindness ended. Finally, her phone lit up. Because I know what it's like to lose someone you can't save, and because no child should ever feel that kind of pain. Her throat tightened. I don't want pity, she wrote. It's not pity, it's recognition. That word hit harder than she expected. Recognition. He wasn't looking down at her. He was looking across. She leaned her head against the wall and closed her eyes. A few seconds later, another message appeared. Do you work? The question caught her off guard. I did until Noah was born. The company folded, daycare shut down, so not right now. What was your field? Biochem research, diagnostics, interned at Novagen before everything fell apart. There was a pause. You were in research? Yes, she replied, but I can also scrub toilets, make lattes, and calculate taxes I can't afford to pay. She didn't expect a response. Instead, she got this. Come by Helix Core tomorrow, 11 a.m. Ask for Ava. No strings, just a conversation. Mira stared at the screen. You're offering me a job, she typed slowly. I'm offering you a chance to take one back. Her heart pounded. Fear and hope collided inside her chest. I don't have childcare, she replied. Another pause. We'll figure it out. She looked down at Noah, asleep and peaceful, surrounded by boxes that still felt unreal. Maybe this was reckless. Maybe this was dangerous. But for the first time in a long time, someone believed she was worth the risk. If you've ever been one moment away from giving up, don't scroll. Subscribe now, because in the next part, Mira walks into a world she was never meant to enter and discovers the kindness that saved her might be hiding something much bigger. Mira stood in front of the mirror that morning and took a long breath. She wore her cleanest jeans, a blazer she had bought years ago for interviews that never led anywhere, and a plain blouse she had almost donated during a hard winter. Her hair was pulled back neatly, not to look impressive, just to look presentable. Noah stirred in his carrier, his tiny fingers curling around the edge of the blanket. He had no idea how much rested on the next few hours. "Just a conversation," Mira whispered to herself. That was what Jackson had said. Still, her stomach tightened the entire ride downtown. Every stop felt heavier than the last. What if she didn't belong there? What if this was some misunderstanding? What if she walked into something she didn't understand? The building appeared in front of her, tall and quiet, all glass and steel. Helix Core. She hesitated before stepping inside. The lobby was calm. No loud talking, no rushing. People moved with purpose, like they knew exactly where they were going. Mira suddenly felt very aware of her worn shoes and secondhand blazer. She approached the desk. "Hi," she said softly. "I'm Mira Jensen. I'm here to see Ava." The receptionist smiled immediately. "Yes, 37th floor. Miss Lynn is expecting you." Expecting. The word echoed in her head as she stepped into the elevator. Her heart beat faster with every floor. 37 felt impossibly high, like she was being lifted into a world she had no business entering. The doors opened to a quiet hallway. A woman in her mid-40s with calm eyes and a tablet in her hand stepped forward. "Mira, I'm Ava Lynn," she said warmly, "Chief of Staff." Her eyes moved to Noah and her smile softened. "And this must be Noah." Mira nodded, surprised. Ava led her down the hall past glass offices and closed doors. Mira swallowed, trying to steady herself. "I have to be honest," she said. "This whole thing feels strange." Ava smiled slightly. "Mr. Albright doesn't do strange," she said. "He does deliberate." They stopped at a large room. Ava unlocked the door and stepped aside. "He wanted you to see this first." Mira walked in and froze. It wasn't a conference room. It was a nursery, a real one. A crib, soft rugs, toys neatly arranged, a changing table, even blackout curtains. Her hand rose to her mouth without thinking. "This is for," she asked quietly. "For employees who need it," Ava replied. He thought it might make things easier. Mira's tears burned her eyes. This wasn't about money, it was about thought. "Why?" Mira whispered. Ava met her gaze. "Because he knows what it feels like to walk in alone." A short time later, Mira sat in a smaller meeting room with a cup of coffee warming her hands. Noah slept peacefully beside her. The door opened. Mira looked up. Jackson Albright looked the same as in the photos, but also different, less distant, more tired, like someone who carried weight no one could see. "Mira," he said, "I'm glad you came." "I wasn't sure if I should," she admitted. "You came anyway. That matters." He sat across from her, calm and steady. "I want to be clear," he said. "You don't owe me anything. This isn't charity." She watched his face carefully. "I don't believe in rescuing people. I believe in giving them a chance to take something back." Her chest tightened. "Why me?" she asked. He paused before answering. "Because you didn't expect help, and because you would have gone without before letting your child suffer." He slid a folder across the table. 3-month position, flexible hours, fair pay. If it doesn't work, you walk, no explanations. Mira opened the folder. Her breath caught. The number made her hands tremble. "Is this real?" she asked. "Yes." She looked down at Noah, then back at Jackson. "And the nursery?" A small smile touched his face. "That's real too." The room was quiet for a moment. Then Mira nodded. "I'll try," she said. Jackson nodded once. "That's all I ask." That night, Mira lay awake with Noah sleeping beside her. She wasn't naive. She knew nothing came without risk. But for the first time in a long time, she wasn't being dragged forward by desperation. She was choosing to step ahead. And she didn't yet know this choice would put her face to face with something far bigger than a job. Before we continue, let me ask you, if you were in her place, would you trust this offer or walk away? Comment below. And don't forget to subscribe, because what Mira discovers next will change everything she thought she understood. Mira showed up early on her first day. She stood outside the building for a moment, adjusting Noah's carrier and taking a slow breath. The city moved around her like nothing had changed, but inside, everything felt different. She hadn't worked in over a year. She hadn't walked into an office without fear in even longer. Inside, the lobby felt quieter than she remembered from the day before. The receptionist smiled and waved her through without hesitation. No questions, no stares. The elevator opened almost as soon as she pressed the button. On the 37th floor, Ava was already waiting. "Good morning," she said gently. "Your space is ready." She led Mira down the hallway. The nursery door was open now, warm light spilling out. Noah was placed gently inside, and he immediately reached for a soft toy as if he had been there before. Mira stood there for a moment longer than necessary, watching him breathe. "He's safe," Ava said quietly. "You can check on him anytime." Mira nodded and followed Ava to a small glass-walled office just across from the nursery. A desk, 2 monitors, a comfortable chair. Simple, clean. "This is yours," Ava said. "You'll have full access. If anything doesn't make sense, ask." And then she left. Just like that. Mira sat down slowly. Her hands hovered over the keyboard. It had been a long time since she logged into an internal system, longer since she trusted herself not to mess it up. But as the files loaded, something familiar clicked into place. Numbers, patterns, systems. She knew this language. She started slow, reviewing basic reports, scanning invoices, reconciling vendor lists. Nothing unusual at first. Everything looked fine. Too fine. After an hour, she noticed it. A small discrepancy, barely visible, the kind most people would ignore. She leaned closer. The same vendor name appeared again and again. The amounts were different, always small enough to avoid attention. Mira frowned. She pulled up the project codes attached to the payments. They didn't exist. Her pulse quickened. She checked another month. Same thing. Different departments, same pattern. She sat back, staring at the screen. This wasn't a mistake. Someone was hiding something. A shadow fell across the glass. Mira looked up. Jackson stood outside her office, hands in his pockets, watching her screen without saying a word. "Settling in?" he asked. "I think so," she replied carefully. He stepped inside and glanced toward the nursery before looking back at her. "Find anything interesting?" She hesitated. "I've only been here an hour, but there are vendor payments tied to project codes that don't exist." Jackson's expression didn't change. "How many?" "Enough to notice." He nodded once. "Keep looking, but quietly." She met his gaze. "You already suspected this." "Yes." "Why not bring in an outside firm?" He paused. "Because I don't know who I can trust." The words landed heavy between them. "Bring anything you find directly to me, no one else." She nodded. That afternoon, Mira worked through lunch. Ava brought food without asking. She barely noticed. She kept digging. By the end of the day, she had found more. Not proof yet, but a pattern that refused to be ignored. That night, at home, Mira lay awake staring at the ceiling. Noah slept beside her, full and peaceful. She should have felt safe. Instead, she felt watched, not by people, by systems. The next morning, she arrived earlier than usual. She pulled up vendor records from the previous quarter and started cross-referencing approvals. That's when she saw it. The same access point, different employee logins, same device. Someone was using borrowed credentials. Her stomach dropped. She copied the files, encrypted them, and saved them to a secure drive. Then she messaged Jackson. "I found something. I need to show you." He replied immediately. "Come to my office." Jackson's office was quieter than she expected. No clutter, no excess. Just glass, steel, and silence. She handed him the drive. He scrolled through the data without speaking.
Finally, he exhaled. You're right. This is deliberate. Whoever it is knows the system really well, Mira replied. He leaned back. That's what scares me. She crossed her arms. So what happens now? Jackson looked at her. Now, he said, we find out how deep it goes. Mira nodded. She didn't say it out loud, but she knew one thing for certain. This job wasn't just a second chance. It was a doorway, and she had just stepped into something powerful people would do anything to keep hidden. If you're still with me, don't scroll away. Subscribe now, because what Mira uncovers next will put her directly in someone else's crosshairs.
By the end of the first week, Mira had found a rhythm. She arrived early, always before most of the floor filled up. She checked on Noah first, every morning without fail. He adjusted faster than she did. He liked the nursery, the quiet, the soft toys, the way people spoke gently around him. Mira, on the other hand, stayed buried in numbers. She treated the job the only way she knew how, seriously. She didn't rush, she didn't assume. She followed patterns. What she was seeing wasn't loud, it wasn't obvious. It was subtle. Small amounts, spread across different departments, approved by different people. On the surface, it looked clean, but underneath, it wasn't. The vendor name kept appearing, always just under internal review thresholds, always attached to projects that sounded real but weren't. She ran the name through the system. Nothing. No physical office, no staff, no real contact information. Mira felt a familiar tension settle in her chest, the same feeling she used to get in research when data didn't lie but people did. She cross-checked older records. The pattern stretched back months, maybe longer. She didn't tell Ava. She didn't email finance. She remembered Jackson's words clearly. Bring anything you find directly to me. By Friday afternoon, she had enough to be sure of one thing. This wasn't sloppy accounting. This was planned. She copied everything to a private encrypted folder and walked down the hall to Jackson's office. She didn't knock. He looked up immediately. You found something? He said. She nodded and handed him the drive. It's not a full picture yet, she said, but someone is moving money through a shell vendor. Small payments, different departments, same access point. He scrolled in silence. These approvals don't belong to the same person, he said. They don't, Mira replied, but the device ID does. Someone's using ghost credentials. Jackson leaned back slowly. You're certain? Yes. He was quiet for a long moment. I've suspected something was wrong for almost a year, he said, but it was always explainable, always just clean enough. He looked at her. I couldn't get anyone to chase it. Mira crossed her arms. So why me? Because you don't owe anyone here anything, he said, and because you see what others ignore. She hesitated. You're asking me to investigate your own company. I'm asking you to find the truth, he replied. And if the truth points somewhere uncomfortable? Jackson didn't hesitate. Then we deal with it. That night, Mira couldn't sleep. Noah lay beside her, warm and safe. Everything she had prayed for just weeks ago was suddenly real. And yet, something felt wrong. Not dangerous yet, just waiting. The next morning, she dug deeper. She traced the shell vendor's routing path through a holding company registered in Delaware. Clean paperwork, legal structure, designed to be invisible. This wasn't petty theft, it was extraction. Someone had built a system meant to run quietly for years. At 9:06 a.m., Jackson stepped into her office. You find more? He asked. Yes, she said. This isn't random. Whoever did this understands internal controls, probably helped design them. His jaw tightened. You think it's someone senior? I think it has to be. He exhaled slowly. Keep everything on your machine only, he said. No backups, no trails. And if anyone asks what you're doing, I'm reconciling back-end billing records, she finished. He nodded. As he turned to leave, he paused. By the way, he said, Noah has fans in the nursery. She blinked.
What? He apparently gave my assistant a look when she tried to take his giraffe. Mira laughed before she could stop herself. Jackson smiled, just barely, and walked out. Later that afternoon, Mira worked through lunch again. She followed email approval chains. That's when she found it, an internal request from the CFO's office. Override access to procurement logs. The date matched the first shell payment. Her fingers tightened around the mouse. She saved the email, encrypted it, added it to the folder labeled Proof. When she finally walked into the nursery, Noah was asleep, clutching his toy like it was a lifeline. Mira sat aside him and rested her head against the chair. She wasn't scared. Not yet. But she understood something clearly now. This wasn't just about money. It was about power. And whoever was behind it wasn't going to let go quietly. If you're still watching, don't look away now. Subscribe, because what Mira uncovers next will force a confrontation no one is ready for.
By the start of the second week, the tension was impossible to ignore. Mira felt it the moment she stepped off the elevator. Conversations stopped when she walked by. Not obviously, just enough to notice. The building hadn't changed, but the air had. She kept her head down and focused on her work. The shell vendor had a name now, Trinox Solutions, LLC. On paper, it looked legitimate. Clean filings, registered address, legal representation, but nothing about it felt real. No staff, no online footprints, no operational history. It existed only to move money. Mira traced the approvals again and again. Different managers, different departments, all clean. Except for one thing. Every approval passed through the same executive access path. Someone high enough to override controls without leaving fingerprints. She didn't say the name out loud yet, but she knew it. Jackson called her into his office late that afternoon. "You're sure?" he said. "Yes," Mira replied. "This isn't a mistake. It's a system." He leaned forward. "Who?" She hesitated for half a second. "The CFO." The words sat between them, heavy and unavoidable. Jackson didn't look surprised. "He hired him 2 years ago," he said quietly, "after the last one resigned. He pushed changes fast, streamlined processes, removed cross-checks, all under the excuse of efficiency." Jackson nodded. "I signed off on it." "That doesn't make this your fault," Mira said. He looked at her. "It makes it my responsibility." Silence filled the room. Finally, Jackson spoke again. "I need confirmation," he said, "evidence that can't be erased or explained away." Mira nodded. "I'm already working on it." That night, Mira stayed late. Too late. The office lights dimmed automatically as she worked through system logs and access trails. She found patterns in timestamps, tiny inconsistencies in device usage, proof that one person was logging in as many. Her phone buzzed. "Still awake?" Jackson messaged. "Yes." "You should go home." "Soon." A pause. "This is going to get ugly," he wrote. "I want you ready." Mira looked at Noah sleeping peacefully on the nursery monitor. "I've been ready longer than you think." The next morning, the mood shifted again. An internal memo circulated quietly. Nothing alarming, just a note about upcoming compliance reviews. It wasn't real. It was bait. Mira watched the system logs closely. Within 2 hours, the memo had been accessed multiple times, twice from the CFO's office, once from his personal executive login. "He knows," Mira said quietly when Jackson appeared at her door. "Yes," he replied. "He's going to move." They didn't have to wait long. By early afternoon, Jackson received an emergency ethics complaint from the board. Elections of financial mismanagement, misuse of company funds, and one specific accusation that Jackson had brought in an external hire to cover up irregularities. Mira. Her stomach dropped. "He's isolating you."
Mira said. He always does. Remove the witness first. What do we do? Jackson looked at her carefully. If we go quiet, he wins. If we move too fast, he controls the story. Mira exhaled slowly. Then we change the story. Jackson studied her for a moment. He has someone, he said. Former federal forensic accountant, off the books. If she steps in, it won't stay quiet. Bring her in, Mira said without hesitation. That night, Jackson handed Mira an access code. A safe place, he said. Temporary. She didn't ask questions. She packed lightly, clothes, laptop, encrypted drives. Noah. The apartment was quiet, clean, anonymous. Mira sat on the edge of the couch and waited. The phone rang 10 minutes later. Mira Jensen, this is Keller. I'm told you found the break. Yes. Start from the beginning, Keller said. Leave nothing out. Mira told her everything. The wrong text, the money, the job, the patterns, the shell company, the CFO. When she finished, there was silence. Then Keller spoke. You're good, and you're right. What happens now? Mira asked. We verify, then we trap him. Mira hung up and looked at Noah asleep in the portable crib. She didn't feel fear. She felt focus, because she understood something clearly now. She wasn't fighting for a job. She was fighting for the truth. And the person on the other side of this wasn't going to go down quietly. If you're still here, stay with me. Subscribe, because what happens next will put everything on the line.
Mira barely slept. The safe apartment was quiet, almost too quiet. Noah slept peacefully in the portable crib beside the couch, his tiny breaths steady and calm. Mira watched him for a long time before turning back to her laptop. Keller moved fast. By sunrise, Mira had sent every file she had: logs, device IDs, approval trails, emails. Nothing held back. Keller didn't sugarcoat anything. He's smart, she said over the phone. He's been doing this for years, but he's predictable. How? Mira asked. Control, Keller replied. People like him always overplay it. The plan was simple. Leak pressure, watch the response, document the reaction. A fake internal memo was uploaded to the system. It looked real. Executive audit review, vendor reassessment, compliance oversight. Bait. Mira watched the access logs in real time. It didn't take long. The CFO's team accessed it first, then the CFO himself. Hooked, Keller said. By afternoon, Jackson called. He filed an emergency ethics complaint, Jackson said calmly. Claims I misused company funds and hired you to cover it. Mira closed her eyes. So that's the move, she said. He wants you gone first. I expected that. You okay? Jackson asked. Mira glanced at Noah. I've survived worse. They moved fast. A public statement went out before the board could react. Internal investigation, forensic review, external oversight. It didn't name names, but it made one thing clear. This wasn't going away quietly. That evening, Keller handed her findings to the state attorney's office. 38 pages. Timestamped, verified, untouchable. At 8:05 p.m., Mira's phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. You're impressive, a voice said. Calm, controlled. She didn't respond. You underestimated me, the voice continued. You were supposed to disappear. People keep making that mistake, Mira said. A quiet laugh. You think this ends me? Yes, Mira replied. I know it does. Silence. Then the line went dead. That night, Mira watched the news without sound. Headlines rolled across the screen. Internal fraud, shell vendors, executive investigation. The story was out. By morning, everything changed. Ava messaged early. He's coming in for one last meeting, 9 a.m., top floor. Just him and Jackson. Mira didn't ask permission. She logged into the internal feed. The conference room appeared on her screen. Jackson sat calmly at the end of the table. The CFO walked in moments later.
Confident, controlled. "I know what this is," the CFO said. "You'd rather burn the company than admit you lost control." "You stole from it," Jackson replied. "I kept it alive while you were distracted," the CFO snapped. "You made it vulnerable." Mira's hands clenched under the desk. "You underestimated one thing," Jackson said. "You thought no one was watching." The CFO smiled thinly. "You mean her?" She didn't guess. She proved it. Silence filled the room. Then security entered. The CFO's badge deactivated. "Mr. Harmon," Ava said calmly, "please come with us." For the first time, his confidence cracked. He didn't look at Jackson. He looked at the camera, at Mira. Then he walked out. Mira leans back in her chair, her breath shaky. It was over. Or at least the worst part was. Jackson messaged her a minute later. "It's done." She looked at Noah. "Yeah," she whispered. "It is. If you're still here, stay with me. Subscribe, because what happens after the fight is where the real change begins."
The morning after everything broke, Mira woke up before her alarm. Not to panic, not to dread, just awake. Sunlight slipped through the thin curtains of the safe apartment, landing softly on Noah's face as he slept. His hand rested on his chest, rising and falling in a slow, steady rhythm. Mira watched him for a long moment, letting the quiet settle into her bones. For the first time in months, her body didn't feel braced for impact. Her phone buzzed on the table. Jackson. "You holding up?" She typed back, "I think so." Another message came almost immediately. "Come in when you're ready. No rush." By the time Mira arrived at the building, the atmosphere had changed completely. Not tense, not quiet, focused. People moved with purpose again. Conversations didn't stop when she passed. Some nodded, some smiled, no one stared. Ava met her at the elevator. "He's been waiting," Ava said. Mira went straight to the nursery first. Noah reached for her the moment he saw her, smiling wide and unbothered by the fact that his mother had just helped take down a powerful executive. She lifted him easily, kissed his forehead, and felt something solid settle inside her. She wasn't surviving anymore. She was standing. Jackson was in his office when she entered. No jacket, sleeves rolled up. He looked tired, but lighter somehow. "You did good," he said. "We did," Mira replied. He nodded. "The board met early," he said. "Unanimous vote. He's suspended pending charges. Federal investigation is moving forward." Mira exhaled slowly. "And me?" Jackson didn't hesitate. "I want you to stay," he said. "Not temporary. I want you to run internal audit. Full autonomy. Direct report to me." She blinked. "That's a lot." "So was what you just handled." She looked down at Noah, then back up. "I'll do it," she said. That afternoon, Mira walked through the building differently. Not carefully, not quietly, confident. People knew who she was now, not because of gossip, but because of results. Later that evening, she stayed late, finishing notes and closing files. The office lights dimmed automatically, but she didn't mind the quiet. A voice came from the doorway. "You should go home." She looked up. Jackson stood there with 2 coffees. She smiled. "You sound like Ava." "He trained me well." They walked out together, not saying much. The city felt different outside, less heavy, less sharp. After a moment, Mira spoke. "Do you ever think about how strange this all is?" Jackson glanced at her. "Which part?" "The fact that this started because I typed one number wrong." He smiled slightly. "I don't think it was wrong. I think it was the first right thing in a long time." That night, Mira tucked Noah into his crib in their new apartment. Not the safe house, their place. Her name on the lease, no fear in the walls. Later, she opened her laptop and found one unread message from Jackson. No subject, just an attachment. It was a screenshot, the very first text she had sent. "Ben, I'm sorry to bother you again. I need $50 for formula. Noah's almost out.
I get paid Friday. I'll pay you back. Please. Below it was his reply. I think you have the wrong number. Her eyes filled. Another message appeared almost immediately. Thought you might want to keep that, so you never forget where you started. She typed back. Do you still think it was an accident? The reply came a moment later. I think some doors only open when you're brave enough to knock. Mira closed the laptop and leaned back, listening to the quiet hum of a life that finally felt steady. She hadn't been rescued, she had been recognized, and she had earned every step forward. If this story stayed with you until the end, thank you. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I read every comment. And if this story moved you even a little, subscribe, because more stories like this are coming. Stories of strength, second chances, and the moments that change everything.